Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back. Today's podcast is focused on giving you all the must-know real estate facts. Now, we do these podcasts occasionally because we want you to know all of the bottom line boiled down actual facts about what's happening in the housing market so that you don't have to guess and, frankly, so you don't have to rely on unreliable sources. So in today's podcast, we're going to give you the bottom line, cold hard facts about the real estate market. Know these facts when speaking with the public so that you truly know what's going on in the housing market, and they will see you as the expert that you hope to be seen as. This is an election year, and that means that there'll be lots of fear and loathing of the economy, housing market, interest rates, and inflation. Social issues will only intensify all of the rhetoric in the news. So you know that the headlines can't be trusted, but the facts can, and let's make it so that you are the trusted outlet of the real estate facts in your market.
Yes, so shall we go facting?
Yes, let's go
like
facting. Well, but again, so Julie, I'm just thinking, if you had these in your back pocket, dear listener, and someone was, tripping over you on the line at Starbucks or whatever, and they're asking you about the housing market, isn't this, just knowing this information, going to make you feel much more confident? It's not just about, it's a great time to sell, it's a great time to buy. There's some actual facts so you can actually have a real conversation. And people will remember that because that's an unusual experience they'll have with you when they're, frankly, talking to you about real estate. You're not just going to give them the normal real estate agent jib-jab. You're going to give them, facts.
The facts. And then they'll look at you and say, gosh, or they'll look back on that conversation. He was really knowledgeable. If I ever have real estate questions, I know exactly who I'm going to go to.
Well, it's just these little tiny nuanced differences when you're, trying to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. It's not about your branding and your marketing. It's about the actual interactions that people have with you. You get the best branding in the marketing ever. But if someone comes across, your presence, right? They're in line with you again at Starbucks, and you don't know the facts, and you're kind of gruff, and you are kind of somebody that they don't want to be around. All the branding and marketing is not going to overcome that actual personal, experience that wasn't a positive one. Now, the flip side to it is if you had no marketing and branding or no advertising, you're focused on basically becoming a skills-based agent, and someone, again, meets you in line at Starbucks, and you are absolutely an expert in the market. Well, guess what? All the marketing and branding in the world is not going to be as powerful as that little brief interaction. So be very clear about that. That's a very important way for you to give yourself permission to really become your best version of yourself as a real estate practitioner and not have to be, I think, sucked down too many of the marketing, advertising rabbit holes. And again, Julie and I are all about proactive lead generation. And then obviously you want to enhance that with a passive lead generation. So it's not like we don't believe in marketing and advertising. We just know where it's supposed to be positioned in your market, in your business, when you're building your business, especially into the spring. So by the way, all the facts and all the notes that we're going to be giving you today are available on our newsletter, and you have to subscribe, and it's free. HarrisRealEstateDaily.com, HarrisRealEstateDaily.com. The link to subscribe is down below, or you can just simply go to HarrisRealEstateDaily.com. But Julie took a couple hours to pull these facts together, and they're waiting for you over at HarrisRealEstateDaily.com. So, Julie, let's get into the facts. What is going on with the inventory?
Yes, one of my favorite topics because it affects everything you do. Inventory rose again. This is good news, albeit modestly, from 556,000 listings to 560,000 actives, but at least we're going the right direction. Now, I like to give perspective on that because right now that's just a number, right? The same week last year, inventory actually fell from 421,000 to 420,000. Again, not a big fall, but it had started to go the wrong direction. So this year is already looking better. And for context, again, the all-time low ever was only 240,000 active listings. That's virtually nothing. And that was in 2022. I remember I was writing an article for Housing Wire talking about that back then, because I remember that number, 240,000 active listings, 2022. And for even more context, if you go pre-COVID boom, in 2015, listings were at 1 million, almost 1,000,001. So that is a huge swing, a huge difference in that inventory level.
So if you want to know why prices are rising, it's because the facts Julie just gave you. And the fact is there's more people that want to buy a home now than there even was in 2015. Everyone knows the interest rates are at, they're settling back into historical norms. And back when the interest rates were lower, more people could qualify to buy a home. And we also had an inventory problem. But it's our contention right now that we have more of an inventory problem than we do an interest rate problem. And I'll give you proof of that. Go look in your MLS. It seems like a lot of markets are putting their, agents are putting their listings up on like Tuesday or Wednesday. And then they're allowing, it's coming soon type listings. Or they'll say, just different things where they're going to start allowing the showings on a weekend. And then the showings start pouring in. And then on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or the following week, they're always in contract. Go look in your MLS to see how many actives there are. Well, again, this leans back into the fact that if you're just relying on the MLS for your inventory, you're going to be hurting in a market like this.
Exactly. So my next question in my notes was, where are you finding inventory for your buyers? And how hard are you looking? Are your buyers looking harder and more creatively than you are? We've done several podcasts talking about how to creatively mine your MLS as your primary tool. But then I think we did last week podcasts about 23 different ways to find inventory that are not your MLS.
Yep, that's a past podcast, and our notes with all those details are available to newsletter subscribers. But you can certainly go back and listen to the podcast we did on that very topic. It's just a few days old. iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere, and even on YouTube, you can listen to the podcast. But that really was a very well received, one of our, I think, most downloaded podcast of at least the last 30 days. So go back and listen to that one. We designed that podcast to motivate you to know where to look for homes for your buyers, but also when you are preparing for the change in the marketplace that's going to happen around August, where you're going to have to start essentially having the buyers sign exclusive contracts with you or a version thereof. You're going to be able to show them your USP, why they would want to sign exclusively with you, and you're going to show them the list of the things or the places you're going to search for homes beyond the MLS. I'm not saying the MLS isn't one of the most powerful tools in the real estate agent's arsenal. It certainly is, but it's not necessarily the only powerful tool in your arsenal. So make sure you're using everything. And I want to go back a half step, Julie.
Sure.
There was, it's fascinating to me, especially the headlines in mainstream media where they're trying to basically talk about homes are too expensive. This, so many, this percent of people have given up on trying to buy a home, all this doom and gloom stuff. And, I'm not saying aren't people out there that are essentially priced out of buying a home. But guess what? That's always been true. We talk about that on this podcast. Statistically, there always is going to be a percent of people that can't afford to buy a home. And there's going to be a percent of people that shouldn't buy a home because, you might be able to afford to buy it, but you can't afford to keep it because homes are expensive. Yeah. But here's the important thing. Real estate is still inflating. And, Julie and I will, for the sake of knowing that we're speaking to real estate agents, we'll use the word appreciate,
sure.
Right? Homes are appreciating, but really they're inflating, by probably in some markets, which will be close to 10% this year. I know that boggles the brain to think, how can we continue on this run of home appreciation or inflation? Well, it's because of the economy. It's because of the pent-up demand. It's because of the fact that, as Julie just said just a few years ago, there are 1 million homes for sale, and now there's only effectively half of that. So as long as we're so inventory constrained, you're still going to see more demand than supply, and prices are going to continue to increase. Now, how can you parlay all of those little factoids into a conversation with a prospective buyer? Very simple. Ask the buyer. This is someone who doesn't have a house to sell necessarily, though it would work both ways. Ask them if they anticipate homes to be worth more in 12 months or less in 12 months. Now, if it's a first-time home buyer, that's conversation then should be asked. The secondary question should be, do you anticipate your rent to be more in 12 months or less in 12 months? So what will happen in most markets, if the average home price is $400,000, if the average house appreciates by, say, 6% this year, which is, again, historically unusual, let's just say, you're going to look in some cases where even with the higher interest rates, the appreciation, the inflation on the home will more than offset the cost of actually owning the home. In other words, that person effectively, on paper, lived there for free. And I want you to think about that for a second. So Mr. Tenant, Mr. Renter, I'm waiting for interest rates to fall, or I'm waiting for this, I'm waiting for that. So in 12 months, you can agree that homes will be more expensive and your rent will be more expensive. But do you realize on paper, and I can show you how, if you bought that $400,000 home, in 12 months, your net worth will have increased by, at least probably, $24,000 to $30,000. And at the same time, you'll have paid at least $24,000 to $30,000 in rent. So one way you basically have the market essentially the market conditions, paying for your lifestyle effectively, or your home. And the other way, you're paying for somebody else's lifestyle or home. That'd be your landlord, right? Now, you can also parlay this into a conversation when you're talking about a move-up seller. And same situation, real estate worth more or less than 12 months. Will the house that they want to buy, assuming they're moving up, be worth less or more in 12 months? And you can explain to them that, guess what? Yes, interest rates might go up, might go down, but what we know it does appear to be a fact, what is going to happen is the cost of the home that you want to buy is going to increase. So you're waiting for something to happen. Well, the something to happen has already happened, and now let's definitely move forward and look to see what's out there. And again, listeners, please use the podcast notes that we gave you the other day about where to go to look for homes for sale beyond the MLS.
Yes, excellent points you made there in terms of just using the facts and the statistics to make your point. And one thing I always think about with regards to renters, if you're waiting around for prices to come down, waiting if rates are going to come down, if prices are going to come down. Well, how about this? What if your lease ends and your landlord doesn't renew it? How fun is that?
Well,
it's stability that you're talking about too.
How much are you increasing the rents by on some of our rentals?
I would have to figure out the percentages, but probably, I don't know, 5 to 10%
right.
each time it turns over.
Well, but think about that. So
sometimes more if we spent money rehabbing it.
And that's in all markets. I mean, we have real estate in many different states, and in all markets we're increasing the rents. I would say that. Right. Now, are we increasing the rents because we're just greedy bastards and no. It's because the insurance went up.
How about the property taxes?
The property taxes went up. The cost of, keeping the property, they're really skyrocketing. So the rents are going to increase because the inflation, the cost of holding that real estate is increasing more than we've ever experienced before.
That's true. And just one more stat that you guys can use in your conversations. This just came out yesterday. 93% of housing markets. So if you put all of the cities and towns together in the U.S., 93% have had significant appreciation, averaging 5 to 10% depending on where you are. I'm going to jump ahead to this right here. Median home price is up from last year. Countrywide, it's $430,000. I think we ended at $385,000. So that gives you that spread right there. And again, that's in 93% of the country. Now, where is it either stable or maybe just a tick less? Texas and Florida have the most inventory, and they're seeing a tiny bit of reduced of their average. Like Austin's gone from 700,000 to 685 as an average. So that's still not so terrible considering that since 2019, most of the country has appreciated or inflated by 48%. So, coming down by 2 or 3% isn't terrible.
Well, that leans back into some of the, I think, misconstrued headlines out there where people are talking about, I think you're about to read it, about price reductions.
Yes.
And there's a difference between price reductions and property values falling. Julie?
Exactly. Okay. So it might interest you to know that 33% of listings that have sold have had at least one price reduction before they actually sold. Now, some of those price reductions happen on weekend number 2. It's not that they're taking forever to sell. We still have very low average days on the market. In most places, that's still less than 60 average days on the market. But that 33% number is historically very accurate. It doesn't matter what type of year it is, whether we're up, down, appreciating, what the interest rates are, anything. It's always between 28 and 33% that have at least one reduction. That's normal, and that is not the same as being upside down or being a short sale or being in foreclosure. That just means that you reduced it to be more accurate with what the market expects.
Well, but I want you to listen to what Julie just said, okay? There's reducing a price or repositioning the house in the market so it more correctly reflects the market's or the buyer's expectations. There's a little script for all of you. Never tell your seller to lower a price. That'll most likely end up with you getting fired. But look, so bottom line is prices get reduced on listings all the time. Prices gets reduced on everything all the time if it's not selling within the desired amount of time. Who cares? That's not the same thing as values falling. For someone to say a list price establishes the value is such bullshit, it's unreal. That means if you decide to put your house that you know is worth $500,000 for sale, and you put it for sale for $5 million, and you end up having to reduce the price to $500,000, according to some of these people writing these salacious headlines, the market value for your home dropped
Prices are crashing.
Yeah, your home market value dropped $4.5 million. That's the conflation that they're doing. And I don't know. Well, I'll give you my opinion. I'm not going to stop saying I don't know. They're doing that for clickbait. It's not like someone in the 4th grade doesn't know there's a difference between values dropping and someone having to simply lower their price. I mean, everyone knows that, but read the headlines. And most people don't read past the headlines. So you're going to be dealing with a lot of consumers who are going to believe that the prices are falling.
A more accurate headline would be prices are slightly less aspirational than they were.
And
they're just a bit less overpriced.
And go back to what Julie was just saying. The fact is that most owners who've owned the home for 3 or 4 years have at least 50% equity in their home. So somebody's not going to walk away with, on a $500,000 home, they're only walking away with $249,000, not $250,000. They'll be okay.
Exactly. Now, back to inventory for a second. All in all, the total number of homes active for sale is up 30%. That's a great headline and fact for you. And it's been going up for 6 months straight. It hasn't been skyrocketing up, but the accumulation of 6 months of inching up means it's up 30%.
Well, so where does this lead to? I've seen, again, a lot of headlines that are they're combining those two facts. Inventory of homes spikes, dramatic price, or, homes are dropping in value. See how they're using this information to try to manipulate the headline so you click on it. And even when you read the facts, look at some of these articles, especially the ones written by non-real estate people, which are all, who's a real estate person that's writing articles, right? But you're going to see what they do. It's a lot of stories, a lot of, Bob in Phoenix was, they bought their home and da-da-da-da-da. And then at the very last bit, they're then going to state what the actual facts are, and you're going to realize everything you'd previously read was essentially a manipulation of the facts. You guys understanding what I'm saying here? You have to be the purveyor of the truth, because when you're giving this information along to your prospective buyers and sellers, and you're actually facting them, as Julie is fond of saying, don't you think they're going to actually appreciate it, especially if they're a homeowner? Oh, Julie, I just read that there was a reduction, or prices are dropping, and all the rest of this doom and gloom. Well, Mr. Seller, or Mr. Prospective Seller, I think you'll be happy to know that in the last 12 months, your home's actually appreciated by 9%. And believe it or not, in the last quarter, year over year, your home is appreciated by another 4%.
Yes, and it's even more powerful when you know your own local stats, right? So when we do these podcasts, because this is a nationwide, worldwide podcast, I'm quoting national averages and focusing sometimes on individual states. Somebody asked me last week about where we get our facts, right? And I like to quote where we get our facts from, whether it's National Association of Realtors, Housing Wire, Altos Research, List Reports. All of these things are available on your local level. You can put in, especially Altos will let you, it's a very low subscription to be specific to 3 or 4 zip codes that you work in, or maybe your particular MLS, so that you can say, well, nationally, this is the fact. And it might surprise you that locally, our numbers are even better than the national average. So when you hear that, 30% of homes are having a price reduction, well, actually, right here in our town, we're only seeing 10% of price reductions. If you know your local stuff, it makes you that much more powerful.
And it's not just your local. Like when Julie and I sold real estate in Columbus, Ohio, we wouldn't want to quote Columbus, Ohio. We'd want to quote, say, for example, New Albany, Ohio, where we sold real estate at the end of our career, end of real estate sales career. And then we'd know those facts. Well, I heard that I just read XYZ news media outlet, and they said home prices are, falling and da-da-da-da. Well, Mr. Seller, here are the facts. And here are the facts as pertains to our particular market. Homes over this price point have actually increased and all that type of stuff. And again, don't be the reason that some of you guys are secret agents. In other words, you avoid, believe it or not, conversations about real estate. You're not looking for opportunities. I know, I'm thinking of John in Canada.
Walkinshaw.
He looks for reasons to have conversations with people about real estate. He knows that's how he wants to be perceived as the real estate expert. So he has to sort of carve out that right to be the expert in their minds by giving them, expert level facts. Whereas some agents who don't know the facts avoid conversations, and then you wonder why the people you see every day in your life end up doing business with somebody else. It's because they may have known you were in real estate, but they didn't take you seriously in real estate because you, after all, weren't obviously taking yourself very seriously as being in real estate. Otherwise, you would have been facting them.
Well, as one of our coaches coined the phrase, secret agents have skinny kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Meaning they don't do many deals. Okay, so back to our facts here. Nationwide, the average days on the market are 47. Do you know what your average days on the market where you sell real estate are? That's easy to find out. You should know that when you're doing CMAs, meeting with your sellers. All right, so back to NAR, National Association of Realtors. Their chief economist, Lawrence Yun, forecasts that interest rates will actually fall in the long term. 2024 existing home sales will rise to 4.46 million. That's up 9%. That's good news from 4.09 million in 2023. And 2025 existing home sales should increase to finally over 5 million. That would be up 13% from 2024.
Okay, so let's level off there. That does not include new construction. The statistics that Jules just gave you from Lawrence Yun were resale homes, not including new construction. So we read and we shared with you guys on this pod that there's supposed to be another 1 million new construction starts that are going to start selling. You're going to be selling, hopefully, a lot of new construction homes about mid-year this year, third, fourth quarter this year, that are going to be completed in spring of summer of the following year. That's what you're going to be selling a lot of if you're smart, if you're paying attention, because that's the direction the market's going to go. And I'm very tempted to start talking about new construction because you and I know
love it.
Well, we do, but we also know it's going to be leading the way to the real estate recovery. Go back and listen to past podcasts where we talk a lot about new construction. We've done so many shows on that. And obviously you can go and join Premier Coaching at premiercoaching.com or just scroll down below and click the link to join Premier Coaching. And you will be able to join Premier Coaching for free for the first 30 days and definitely drill down on all the different ways that you can be essentially leveraging yourself into new construction. It's an extraordinary opportunity for all of you. And it is definitely going to be on every buyer on every buyer's radar. They're out right now. Your buyers are out there right now looking at new construction that you probably don't know about. So become the expert on what's available as far as new construction in your marketplace. And remember, not in the MLS.
Yes, perhaps the number one reason, quote, your buyers are, quote, ghosting you is because they actually are in contract on new construction and they're afraid to tell you about it. So There you are. Okay, don't let it happen to you. One more quote from Lawrence Yun. He said that based on April's employment data, there are 6 million more jobs compared to the pre-COVID highs, and jobs are boosting home prices. Again, another great headline about why prices are continuing to go up. Now, I want to change gears just for a second, Tim, and have a short conversation about one of the unintended consequences of the commission lawsuit settlement. This is a conversation from several coaching clients. As agents are implementing the required buyer agency agreements, because that's already happening, even though officially it doesn't have to happen until August, I think it's August 17th, agents are already getting used to it, which is a smart thing to do. We've done lots of podcasts on this, but here's an unintended consequence. Buyers don't necessarily know the difference between a showing agreement, or like what Zillow rolled out, a touring agreement for 7 days, an exclusive buyer agreement, and just a non-exclusive agreement. So you need to be, as a listing agent, when somebody calls to see your listing or an agent sets that up, you need to know what is the situation, especially when a seemingly unrepresented buyer calls you, the listing agent, wants to see it. You have to ask them, are you represented by an agent? The buyer's going to say, well, I think so. And then you, the listing agent, are going to ask, did you sign something? I did. Now there's another question. What type of agency are you in? So that you know whether that's a potential dual agency, whether that, what's going on with that. And buyers don't know the questions to ask.
So on Monday's show, we're really going to be drilling down on this very topic, and we're going to be getting into the weeds because there's a lot of unanswered questions about essentially how to present, when to present, frankly, if to present your exclusive buyer contract. Because guess what? All of these, the Zillow touring agreement, all of these different things that you're going to hear people talking about, they haven't been tested. And there's going to be more follow-up litigation. There's going to be more, I think, consternation about how to actually matriculate through these new rules. Mm-hmm. And John Walkinshaw, who I mentioned earlier, he's an example up in Canada. They actually have buyers. It's even hard for me to think through this. Buyers who will be specifically unrepresented, and they'll want to be unrepresented. Mm-hmm. They'll go to listing agents directly and they'll say, I'm unrepresented, I want to stay unrepresented, I don't want you representing me. And they're not asking for the buyer agent side of the commission as some sort of concession, right? So that was my first go-to. Well, they must just be wanting the commission, and they don't. They just don't want to be represented. That's it. End of conversation. Well, that puts a lot of added burden onto the listing agent, who now effectively has to do the listing agent's job and the buyer agent's job. So what John was telling me in Canada and I cannot see why this wouldn't happen here. In Canada, what they've actually done is they made it so that there's different, it's like similar to our flexible fee commission structure, but one of the options is going to be, Mr. Seller, if a buyer shows up and they want to purchase the house and they're not being represented and I have to do both sides of the transaction, the commission is going to be this. In other words, he's not just going to charge his normal listing commission. He's going to charge a premium on top of his normal listing commission because he's having to do what oftentimes is more than double the work.
And that's not being a dual agent either.
Right.
That's just doing more work. And this further demonstrates how negotiable commissions are. And I thought that was a brilliant thought, to go up, not down, because it is, we used to call that an undisclosed dual agency where you were actually doing twice the work for half the money. So John's solution is to talk to the seller about that. If I'm going to be doing twice the work, then the commission will be more. So this is a moving thing, guys, and we're going to report more on it next week. What I would say in the interim is pay very close attention to what your boards are doing, what your brokers are doing, what your states are requiring. For example, the Kenmores in Washington State, their state of Washington is so far ahead of this because of what happened in the Northwest MLS. They already have implemented all of their required forms. They're ready to go. They don't deal with any of the stuff bubbling around because their state is ahead. Your state may not be. The other thing that I would say is, if you're not getting leadership from your brokerage, you might want to look at changing brokerages, because I am getting a lot of those questions. What should I do? I'm coming to coaching because I feel like I'm out there swinging in the wind trying to figure out this whole agency thing that's going on in the forms and what's going, So that's perhaps a conversation to have with yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, if you're ready to have that conversation, we'd love to talk with you about joining Julie and I over at eXp Realty. It's the next natural step for all of you in your real estate career, whether you're an individual agent or you're a seasoned veteran agent or broker. We're talking to a lot of brokers and teams right now. If that's a conversation you're ready to have, which you should be, there's two ways to learn more. Scroll down below and click the link to learn more about our eXp Realty group, or just simply text me directly at 512-758-0206. In the meantime, look for a very in-depth, drilled down podcast in the next few days. It's going to be specifically about all these little nuanced differences between all the different ways that we think that, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your perspective, you're going to be representing buyers. It is worth mentioning, during the greatest times of change, the greatest fortunes have always been made. And we are definitely in one of those greatest times of change now. Don't be afraid. Don't wait for the dust to settle. Figure out a way to move forward quickly, and then you'll have an unfair advantage in your marketplace because you developed the skills long before your competitors even realized they needed to change their approach. Don't be intimidated by what's going on. Be excited about what's going on. And just, I think, closing the loop, make sure you start with understanding the facts of the market, because when you do, you will feel incredibly optimistic and excited. There is basically no reason to believe that this isn't the beginning of a long-term, ever-increasing, I think, housing boom. It's not going to just be like, oh, it's today's market, then tomorrow's the boom. It's going to feel progressively better as the days, weeks, months tick on. Isn't that how it's feeling now? I bet it is. If it's not, you need to maybe think about, well, A, what are you listening to? What are you reading? What are you paying attention to? What are you allowing to influence you? What's your environment like? In other words, you might be surrounding yourself with negativity that's clouding over the fact that, guess what? This is the beginning of a long-term, ever-increasing boom in the real estate market, and probably also the economy. So keep your heads above the clouds. Realize that there's birds and sunshine, and you don't have to be, you don't have to be sucked into the doom and gloom headlines all the time. Know that you are in the right place at the right time. Now take the right actions. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.